For thousands of years, human beings have gone to war. They have fought over land, over faith, over survival, and sometimes over nothing more than pride. What you are about to see are the 100 battles that mattered most, ranked by the weight of their consequences, the scale of their violence, and the degree to which the world that followed them was different from the world that came before. We open at the absolute summit of human destruction. The battles of the Second World War that appear at the top of this list were not merely large. They were civilizational in their stakes. At Stalingrad, the fate of Europe's eastern half was decided. At Kursk, the last great German armored offensive died on the Russian steppe. At Normandy, the Western Allies returned to a continent they had been driven from 4 years earlier. These were not battles fought by heroes on open fields. They were fought by exhausted men in rubble, in mud, in freezing cockpits, and burning tanks. Men who mostly did not know they were making history. And then, before the age of industry, there was the ancient world. Marathon, Gaugamela, Thermopylae. Battles where a few thousand men, with bronze and iron and sheer tactical brilliance, redirected the course of Western civilization. Alexander the Great appears 3 times in this countdown, and each time, outnumbered, he won. As we move deeper into the list, the battles grow more varied, but no less decisive. Zama ended Carthage as a military power forever. Trafalgar gave Britain command of the seas for a century. Waterloo closed the Napoleonic era in a single afternoon. These are battles that did not merely end wars, they ended eras. The medieval world also demands its place here. Hastings changed the English language. Manzikert opened Anatolia to the Turks and set in motion the eventual fall of Byzantium. Ain Jalut stopped the Mongols, the only force that had, until that moment, seemed unstoppable. These were battles where small numbers of men, in the right place at the right moment, bent the arc of continents. The First World War enters the list here too, and it enters with a particular kind of horror. The Somme, Verdun, Passchendaele. Battles measured not in tactical genius, but in attrition, in the deliberate industrial consumption of human life. The men who fought them were not outmatched in courage. They were outmatched by barbed wire, by mud, and by generals who had not yet learned what modern weapons had made possible. The middle of this list is where the full range of human conflict comes into view. Naval battles and cavalry charges, sieges and open field engagements, the clash of galleys at Lepanto, the thunder of dreadnoughts at Jutland, the only time in history that 2 great battleship fleets met in open water and fought to a draw. Constantinople appears here, not the greatest battle by numbers, but perhaps the most consequential of the medieval world. When the Theodosian walls finally fell in 1453, 1,000 years of the Eastern Roman Empire ended in a single morning. The age of gunpowder had arrived, and nothing, no wall, no matter how ancient or how thick, would ever be the same again. And then, there are the battles that rewrote empires without massive bloodshed. Plassey, Tsushima. Battles where a small force, in the right moment, with the right intelligence or the right technology, shattered an opponent far larger than themselves. These are the battles that remind us that war is not always won by the side with the most men. It is won by the side that understands what is happening faster than the other side does. As we pass the halfway point, the battles become more specific, more intimate in their geography, even when enormous in their consequences. Jerusalem in 1099, Dien Bien Phu in 1954, Isandlwana in 1879. Each of these was fought in a particular valley, on a particular hillside, across a particular stretch of ground that you could walk across in an hour. And yet each of them changed something fundamental. At Jerusalem, the Crusaders breached walls that had held for centuries, and the aftermath poisoned relations between faiths for generations. At Dien Bien Phu, a European colonial army suffered a defeat so complete, so humiliating, that it triggered the collapse of French Indochina and set the stage for the Vietnam War. At Isandlwana, 20,000 Zulu warriors demonstrated that discipline and courage, with the right terrain and tactics, could destroy the finest professional army on Earth. The Pacific War is well represented here. Midway, Coral Sea, Guadalcanal, the Atlantic Campaign. These were battles fought across millions of square kilometers of open ocean and dense jungle. Battles where logistics mattered as much as firepower, and where the margin between victory and catastrophe was often a single decoded message or a few minutes of warning. The further we descend this list, the more we find battles that shaped not just nations, but the very idea of how war is fought. Cambrai in 1917, where 476 tanks broke through in hours what years of infantry assault had failed to achieve, changed the doctrine of every army on Earth. Chosin Reservoir in 1950, where 15,000 Marines fought their way out of encirclement against a force 8 times their size, in temperatures that froze weapons and killed men in their sleep, became the defining test of the United States Marine Corps. Ancient Rome looms large in this section. Alesia, Pharsalus, Cannae, where Hannibal's encirclement of a Roman army became the template for military envelopment that is still studied and still attempted 2,000 years later. These were battles fought by men who had no maps in the modern sense, no radio, no logistics chain beyond what they could carry, and yet they executed maneuvers of breathtaking complexity. Saratoga and Yorktown appear here, battles that, in purely numerical terms, were small, but their consequences were vast. Saratoga brought France into the American Revolution. Yorktown ended it. 2 engagements, a handful of miles apart in time and geography, that created the United States of America. At the lower end of this ranking, the battles grow smaller in scale, but not in significance. The Falklands in 1982 was the last conventional naval war between modern states. Mogadishu in 1993 changed how America thought about military intervention for a generation. Ia Drang in 1965 proved or disproved, depending on who you asked, whether helicopter assault could replace the infantry advance. And then there are the ancient encounters that feel almost mythological. Kadesh, 4,000 years ago, the oldest recorded battle in human history, fought between Egypt and the Hittites on the banks of the Orontes River, and ending not in decisive victory, but in the world's first recorded peace treaty. Megiddo, a city so central to ancient warfare that its name gave us the word Armageddon. Karbala, where 72 men died in a single afternoon, and the wound they left in the Islamic world has not healed in 14 centuries. This is what war does. It concentrates history. It takes the slow drift of politics and economics and faith and ambition and compresses it all into a single day, a single hour, sometimes a single decision made in the chaos of a battlefield. by a man who could not possibly have known what he was deciding. These 100 battles are where that compression happened, where the world changed, and where, for better or worse, we became who we are. If you made it to the end, thank you. Every battle on this list was chosen because it mattered, not just to the soldiers who fought it, but to every generation that came after. If you think a battle was ranked too high, too low, or shouldn't be here at all, tell us in the comments. We read everyone. And if you want to see what comes next on the Deck of Legends, hit subscribe. The next countdown is already in production. We'll see you there.